As the United States enters its third week of a government shutdown, its effects are no longer confined to dry television news headlines or financial reports. Now, shutdown has spread beyond the halls of Congress and into the small corners of life, into the kitchens, dining tables, empty refrigerators, and piled up bills of millions of American families. On the streets around Washington, D.C., many government office windows remain dark, and in smaller neighborhoods, families of public employees, used to a steady pace of life, are recalculating every meal, every expense, and praying that their suspended paychecks will soon return. Shutdown is more than an administrative concept or a political bargaining chip. For the people, it is a test of faith, resilience, and compassion, as ordinary people struggle to cope in a situation they did not create. From the house to the roof, when the budget is not passed, life stops. The cause of the crisis lies in the impasse in passing the federal budget. The U.S. Congress, after many rounds of tense negotiations, has not been able to reach a consensus between the two parties. The cause lies in the disagreements that are not small: the level of spending on health care, subsidies, border security, and health insurance support has become an arena between the two parties. Each side has a different priority. One wants to cut spending to control the public debt. The other believes that more investment is needed in healthcare, education, and social welfare. However, amid those numbers and arguments, the people, who are living on the government's salary, become the silent victims. When the budget is stalled, a series of federal agencies are forced to close. From the Environmental Protection Agency to the Social Security Administration to the National Institutes of Health, which conducts life-saving research, everyone is affected. Despite repeated statements by the president and lawmakers about wanting to reopen the government quickly, negotiations have failed. The Treasury Department warned, according to Reuters, that the shutdown is hurting the real economy, with payments delayed, museums and national parks closed, and many public services suspended. Meanwhile, with each passing day, more families are falling into poverty, and the cold words "temporarily closed" continue to appear on the doors of government agencies. A budget failure is no longer a foreign concept. It has become an attack on the stability of people's lives. Workers without pay, and the silent worry in every family. Nearly 900,000 federal workers have been furloughed so far, and about 700,000 more are still working without pay until the government reopens. This isn't just economic data. It's millions of people struggling to pay bills, rent, and food. People in essential sectors like aviation security, air traffic control, healthcare, and the CDC are still working to keep the country running, but they're working without knowing when they'll be paid. We're keeping thousands of flights safe every day, but when we get home at night, we don't know where we're going to pay the rent, said one air traffic controller in Denver. The staffing shortage has delayed hundreds of flights in Denver, Atlanta, and Washington as shift rates have plummeted. The number of flights affected has increased nearly tenfold in just a few days, reflecting the fatigue and stress among airline workers, according to the Department of Transportation. It's not just transportation workers. Public health workers, scientists, and engineers at the National Institutes of Health are also working without pay, putting many research projects on hold. One doctor said, "We can't stop because patients still need treatment, but it's painful to have to choose between continuing to serve and taking care of your family." According to the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, more than 60% of affected public employees don't have enough savings to last more than 2 weeks, and many have resorted to using credit cards to pay for basic needs. A female airport security officer in Nashville said, "I have to choose between gas to get to work or milk for my child, a choice no mother wants to face." In many places, charities are extending support with hot meals, gas cards, and free food. But the long lines of public servants waiting to receive relief have become a heartbreaking symbol of an America that has come to a standstill, where the people who once kept the country running now have to wait for help. From tiny homes to food banks, when pride turns to worry. In Colorado, the Homefront Military Network, a nonprofit organization that supports families of military and government employees, is struggling to keep up. Its hotline is constantly overloaded, receiving hundreds of calls a day, according to its director. The voices on the other end of the line share the same concern. We don't know how we're going to pay our rent, our car payments, our utility bills if we don't get a paycheck. Just missing one paycheck can send people into crisis, the director says. We've seen people who served in the military, who have helped others, now have to ask for help to take care of their own families. On the eastern side of the country, in Philadelphia, the Share Food program, the region's largest food bank network, is in a similar situation. Warehouses that used to be full of food are now down to a few shelves of canned goods. With federal aid stalled, the need for relief has doubled, while supplies are only enough for the next few weeks. The program director shared through tears. I have never seen this scene. People in uniform, veterans, nurses, standing in line waiting to receive free food. They don't deserve to be here, but they have no other choice. The scene at the food distribution points made many people choke up. People who used to contribute to society, maintain security, care for patients, teach students, now have to bow their heads before the shelves of relief goods. No one blames, no one complains, just silence mixed with shy looks, because they never thought they would be in this situation. A healthcare worker in Pennsylvania said she had to stand in line for nearly an hour just to get a free bag of food for her family of 4. I was still wearing my white blouse, and I saw people in police uniforms, airport staff also standing in line. We looked at each other, didn't say anything, but everyone had the same question in their eyes. How did this happen? The image spread quickly on social media. Long lines of people in the cold autumn weather, holding boxes of noodles, bags of rice, food cards. There was no distinction between professions or status, only empathy between people overcoming the crisis together. In many small communities, people began to organize donations, sharing food and support money. A grocery store owner in Denver said he had opened a free sharing corner right in his store, where anyone in need could come and get necessities without being asked or having to register. I saw government officials coming. They were embarrassed. I told them, there is nothing to be embarrassed about. Today I help you. Tomorrow you may be the one helping someone else. In the midst of a crisis, these small acts become a ray of kindness, reminding people that the true strength of a country lies not only in its budget, but in the bond between people who share in difficult times. When businesses stop investing and market confidence is shaken, the impact of the budget crisis is not limited to people's lives. It is spreading deep into the U.S. economic system, which was once considered the most sustainable and dynamic in the world. When a series of federal agencies temporarily stopped operating, important links in the economic chain were broken. Businesses could not borrow capital, investors had no statistical data to plan, and millions of expansion plans were frozen indefinitely. At commercial banks, thousands of small business loan applications were suspended because they needed approval or guarantees from agencies such as the Small Business Administration, SBA, or the Federal Insurance Corporation, FDIC, which have both temporarily stopped operating. This caused a series of businesses to fall into a state of financial oxygen deficiency, not enough money to pay salaries, buy raw materials, or maintain production. One Ohio business owner told Reuters, I have new orders, I have customers, but I don't have the capital to buy raw materials. It's like the whole economy is frozen and no one knows when it will thaw. The lack of data transparency has added to the market's fragility. With the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, and the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA, ceasing to release key reports, such as unemployment, inflation, and quarterly GDP, investors have lost their compass. Stock markets have begun to show signs of concern. The Dow Jones and NASDAQ fell slightly, and consumer confidence has fallen to its lowest level since the COVID-19 pandemic, according to a Conference Board survey. The lack of information and political uncertainty has made businesses more cautious, slowing investment and postponing expansion plans, causing GDP growth to slow significantly, Oxford Economics reported. During the 34-day shutdown in 2019, the U.S. lost more than $11 billion, of which $3 billion was considered permanently lost due to unrecoverable commercial and service activities. If the current situation continues for a few more weeks, Oxford predicts that the damage could be 3 to 4 times that figure, especially when sectors such as technology, retail, and transportation are simultaneously affected by high interest rates. But what is more worrying is not the statistics, but people's spending habits. Consumer spending, which accounts for about 70% of U.S. GDP, is falling sharply. With millions of people not receiving paychecks, they are forced to cut back on all non-essentials. No more meals out, no weekend shopping, no travel or entertainment. Stores, restaurants, and retail chains all recorded a 15–25% drop in revenue in just the first 2 weeks of the shutdown. An internal survey by the Federation of Federal Employees, AFGE, found that more than 60% of affected workers had to withdraw emergency savings or use credit cards to pay for living expenses. One airline worker said, "I never thought I, who serves millions of passengers every year, would have to borrow money to buy food for my children." Experts warn that if consumer confidence does not recover soon, the economic recovery curve will be stretched out for quarters, because consumption is the blood of the system. When cash flow is blocked at the individual level, the entire national economy slows down. Investors call this the silent bleeding effect. When the economy is still moving, but the energy is drained from every household, every business, and every American's restless sleep. True stories and silent exhaustion. Behind every dry number in the statistics is a person, a story, a family struggling with uncertainty. Every fact about 900,000 people temporarily laid off, or 700,000 people working without pay, is not just information. It is 900,000 hands clinging to hope, 700,000 hearts beating in fear of losing the stability they once prided themselves on. In a small town in Maryland, a National Institutes of Health (NIH) employee said he had to turn to the local food bank to get enough food for his children. He choked up saying, "I used to think my job as a national health researcher was stable and reliable, but now I'm standing in food lines. I don't know how much longer I can last, and that scares me more than any case I've ever worked on." In another corner of Washington, D.C., a Social Security Administration employee is experiencing similar feelings of helplessness. She said the agency has been forced to temporarily stop issuing certificates of eligibility, the documents that help people qualify for public housing, food stamps, and medical assistance. Every day I get hundreds of calls for help. People say they're about to lose their homes. People say their kids have nothing to eat. But there's nothing we can do. I've never seen the morale of my colleagues and the people so low. Stories like these are being repeated everywhere, from medical labs to government offices, from suburban neighborhoods to big cities. Everyone is trying to stay calm, but the general atmosphere is one of widespread fatigue, as if the whole country is holding its breath, waiting for a sign of hope. What is remarkable is that the fear here is no longer just about wages or living costs, but skepticism about the sustainability of the system. When people who once believed in the stability of the state, who once prided themselves on working for the government means working for the future, now live in daily anxiety, the problem is no longer finances, but trust. A sociologist at Georgetown University commented, "When people lose trust, they don't just stop spending, they stop believing that society can protect them. And that is the biggest damage of any crisis." On social media, emotional posts spread like wildfire. Photos of uniformed workers lining up at food banks, messages saying, "I never thought I'd have to ask for help like this," or photos of shaking hands holding stimulus checks. These are moments that make Americans, regardless of their status, re-examine the true value of stability and fairness. Because when a country leaves those who once held it insecure, the crisis is not just economic, it's a crisis of faith. Losing a paycheck is bad, but losing trust is worse. For many Americans, the scariest thing is not just losing a paycheck, but losing trust. They fear that the political divide will continue, making people's lives hostage in negotiations. An economist at EY Parthenon commented, "When people's trust is eroded, they not only reduce spending, but also doubt the economy's ability to recover." Meanwhile, those working in the public sector are starting to wonder whether they should continue to stick with their government jobs when their incomes can be interrupted at any time. For many Americans, the scariest thing is not just losing a paycheck, but losing trust. They fear that the political divide will continue, making people's lives hostage in negotiations. When people's confidence is eroded, they not only reduce spending, but also doubt the economy's ability to recover, said an economist at EY Parthenon. Meanwhile, public sector workers are starting to wonder whether they should continue to stick with their government jobs when their incomes could be interrupted at any time. Experts say that although the government will reopen sooner or later, the damage that people have suffered will not be easily compensated. Many families have depleted their savings and fallen into debt. Small businesses have had to suspend expansion plans, and workers' trust in the system has been severely tested. If this situation continues, the impact will not only be economic, but also psychological, with millions of people feeling insecure and lacking confidence in the stability of the government. Experts say that while the government will reopen sooner or later, the damage inflicted on people will not be easily compensated. Many families have exhausted their savings and fallen into debt. Small businesses have had to suspend expansion plans, and workers' trust in the system has been severely tested. If this situation continues, the impact will not only be economic, but also social and psychological, with millions of people feeling insecure and lacking confidence in the stability of the government. Amidst the crisis, America's kindness still shines. Despite the hardship, Americans are showing their best: unity, humanity, and kindness. Across the states, from the bustling streets of New York to the small towns of the Midwest, we see a society bracing itself to weather the storm, but still reaching out to each other instead of turning away. Voluntary organizations are open around the clock. Churches, community centers, and veterans groups are becoming shelters for families in need. Many small restaurants are posting free meals for federal workers signs, and owners are quietly spending their own money to cook a few extra meals a day. In residential areas, neighbors are sharing packages of food, cartons of milk, to ensure no one goes to bed hungry. A Texas store owner told CNN, "I can't help the whole country, but I can help a few people in this neighborhood. And if everyone did that, America would never fall." In those moments, America is no longer the arguments in Congress, not the dry numbers in the budget report, but the image of ordinary people. People who are still resilient, still living kindly, still reaching out to help each other in the most difficult times. A volunteer in Washington said that she distributed more than 500 meals in just one day, but what moved her most was not the number of meals, but the way people treated each other. They didn't just come to get food, they asked about each other, shared, encouraged, and many came back to help distribute more. In the midst of the crisis, we realized that human love is still the most sustainable thing. Those scenes, the long lines at food banks, the hands passing bags of cookies, the sympathetic eyes, are the image of a nation that is still standing, not because of financial strength, but because of its humanity. Because in the end, a strong nation is not defined by wealth or power, but by its ability to care, share, and bounce back from crisis. And Americans, despite many shutdowns, political upheavals, and natural disasters, have never let their fire of humanity die out. Humanity die out. Humanity die out.